Before anyone feels the need to state the obvious, I know I'm not a good person. I'm a cheater, always have been. I could lie. I could tell you about how my dad wasn't around, or some Freudian bullshit about how every girl I ever dated could never match up to my mother. But it wouldn't be the truth. I didn't have a hard life, and my relationship with my mother is healthy. I'm just an asshole, but I didn't deserve this. Brian, you're the best thing that has ever happened to me, but I need just a little more time, Blythe whispered, her long blonde hair falling over her reddening, gorgeous face. Yeah, sorry, it's only been 9 months, I scoffed. I bit my lip. I've never really handled rejection well. It isn't that my ego is fragile or anything, pride is just hard. You're worth the wait. I have work in the morning. I brushed her hair out of her face and chastely kissed her soft lips. I should have just gone home and went to bed, rubbed one out for good measure, but a scorned man goes where his dick and the night will carry him. On the drive home, I pressed my thumb against my cell phone screen, like a worry stone, and thought of Shelley. She was a 6.5 out of 10 on a good day, but she never said no. The phone rang twice on my end before she picked up. How soon do you want me over? Shelley purred. I like that. No hello, no small talk, and best of all, no, I need more time. How about you host tonight? I was in the area. I'm about 5 minutes out. The thought of Shelley in my bed like old times was a nice one, but I didn't want to risk anyone seeing her car there. I knew Blythe had no reason to be suspicious, no reason to follow me, but I was careful. I'd always been careful. Shelley agreed, she always did. I was there right on time. I hesitated just for a second in her driveway. I almost pulled back out, but then I started replaying the shock in Blythe's eyes when I asked. The way she softened her voice when she told me she wanted to take a little more time. Like she thought my feelings needed sparing, that I'd fall apart and cry or something. Her infantilizing tone was too much. Pride has a way of really fucking things up, and so do I. Less than a half hour later, I wasn't thinking about that anymore. I was busy getting tangled in the sheets with Shelley. In the heat of the moment, I felt something sting my back. I tried to swipe it off, not wanting to be distracted from her, but it was starting to burn. As I twisted to get a better smack at my back, I saw Blythe at the window, blonde hair floating in the wind, and her face pressed hard against the glass. I scrambled to turn around and claw my way through the tangled sheets. In all my glorious efforts, I only succeeded in falling off of the bed and smacking my cheekbone on the wooden frame on my way down. Shelley squeaked at the sharp smack. Something between a stutter, beatboxing, and a juvenile attempt at profanity fell out of my mouth. I finally untangled myself enough to turn towards the now vacant window. Blythe was gone. I ran out the front door, stark naked to an empty street. Not even taillights winked in the distance. Get back inside. Have you lost your mind? Someone's going to call the cops. Shelley's screams rattled in between my ears. I'm sure they would if she kept it up. I glanced one more time down the empty road and turned back inside. I didn't mention Blythe when I tried to explain my sudden interest in streaking. But I did tell her I thought there was someone outside the window. At this point, I was starting to doubt that Blythe had been there at all. Hell, that anyone had been there at all. Maybe it was guilt. Either way, the night was ruined. I didn't kiss her when I left. I didn't even look back. The gravel crunched under my Corolla as it crawled down my street. My heart thumped in time with the rolling tires, imagining Blythe waiting in the driveway. Maybe a brick through my window. Something. But there was no sign of Blythe, her car, nor any vandalism. Lost in thought, I smashed the brake with the nose of my car inches from the garage door. The spot on my back started to tingle. I jingled my keys as I half-skipped to the entryway. I shook my head and grinned. I'd called Blythe in the morning to be sure, but I was confident at this point that I had made a mistake at Shelley's. I kicked myself internally, but there'd be another night. There always was. After a fast shower, I checked my back. Except for a small red dot, there was nothing to blame for the burning. Could it have been an asp? Do spider bites burn? A bee sting? My mind wandered, but I didn't have any solid answer. Maybe I should be ashamed to admit it, but as soon as my head hit the pillow, I was asleep. Guilt couldn't override my exhaustion, and I wasn't all that sure I felt guilty anyway. My dreams told another story, though. My pupils dilated with such ferocity, adjusting to the dim lighting of Blythe's living room, I could feel the stretch in my eyes. Although my chest heaved with effort, I could only whisper her name. She responded with laughter, the tinkle of an amused child. My heart battered in my chest. The pain from the bug bite on my back dialed up to 11. Sharp appendages caressed the edges from the inside. I choked on the scream, trying to throw itself from my lips. I could feel something soft pushing from my stomach, blooming in my esophagus. I gave a forceful cough and felt a thick, squishy lump fly up from my throat and flop onto my tongue. Gagging, I pulled a clump of Shelley's hair from my mouth. Long strands straggled up my throat as I removed the mass. All the while, Blythe laughed. I woke up a mess, bloodshot eyes and my stomach in knots. I fumbled my phone and called Blythe. The certainty I'd had from last night was fading. The damn nightmare was playing tricks with my head. Or my guilty conscience. Either way, I needed to know. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times, and she finally picked up. She sounded her usual chipper self. My voice cracked as I lied. I told her I'd called out from work, that I cared about her too much to leave things the way we had last night. And she ate it. She ate it well. The cramp in my stomach released. We made dinner plans and hung up. I tried to lay back down, eager to get some restful sleep, but my body wouldn't comply. The relief I felt wasn't enough to appease the burning on my back. I stumbled to the bathroom. Upon further investigation, what was once a small dot had most definitely spread. The center appeared to have crusted over a bit. No matter how I twisted or contorted, it rested solidly between my shoulder blades just out of reach. The crusted head on the mound taunted and begged for the sensual scratch of my fingernails. But there was a bigger problem. My cheek was swollen where I'd smacked it on Shelley's bed frame the night before, a light purple shadow licking the apple. Another lie I'd need to invent to cover my tracks. It was never the cheating that bothered me. It was the lying. It was the having to remember. It was an irritating inconvenience. I pulled out my phone to text an apology to Shelley. Given the giant pain in the ass this all had been, I doubt I'd be seeing her for a while, but I believed in keeping all my bridges intact for the crossing. As an afterthought, I asked if she'd been bitten by anything lately. As I rotted in bed waiting for a reply, soft dreamless sleep found me. My eyes thrust open as the lump on my back radiated pain. Both cheeks boasted that just smack tingle that teased of a fever. I started to think about the time I'd been playing in a brush pile as a child. A black widow had bitten me and I'd been dog shit sick for a few days. But did it burn? I checked the time and nearly tripped over myself throwing clothes on to meet Blythe. No word still from Shelley. Maybe my odd behavior had spooked her, but no response at all? We had no time to think on it now. I hastily deleted the text thread and shot one to Blythe telling her I was on my way. I wouldn't normally go to dinner sick, but I needed to see Blythe. I just couldn't shake that something was off, and I needed my mind at ease. I popped a couple of ibuprofen and headed out the door. For the first time in 9 months of seeing her, Blythe was late. This shit day was turning out to have plenty of firsts. It had only been 5 minutes at this point, no big deal. I tried to tell myself that maybe there was traffic. A flat tire, she couldn't find her keys. Anything other than her standing me up. The next 5, I started to feel a twinge of rot in the bottom of my stomach. She was outside the window, saw everything, and was standing me up as punishment. My armpits leaked fever sweat. I was angry. Just as I scooted my seat back to leave, she walked in. Sorry, couldn't decide on shoes. She struck a pose with her heel lifted before gliding into her seat. I couldn't help but chuckle. I was about to lose it over a woman and her shoes. Blythe was completely herself, smiling and beautiful. I was trying to keep things light, but I'd started to sweat all over now. The thick kind, the kind that refuses to drip. The kind that reminds you of that kid in 3rd grade who spat on you on the bus and it globbed on your cheek. Oh, the kid sucked air and one dared you to do something, but you wore that glob like a coward's badge and did nothing. You sat there with your head down until you stop, staring at the congealed mess on your sleeve, and You look like shit. Are you alright? Blythe's eyebrow was hiked higher than a whore's skirt, and I cackled right there at the table. My stomach heaved. I wasn't alright. We both knew it, but only one of us knew why. She settled the tab and invited me over to her place to take care of me. I know I didn't deserve it, but I needed it. Even the dim lights in the restaurant were starting to bother my eyes. This is where things get a little fuzzy. I remember most of the drive. I remember seeing Blythe's door, and then I remember waking up on a couch with the phone to my ear, still ringing. I shook my pounding head and answered. Brian Pond, this is Detective Waysome. He sucked air, but didn't wait for confirmation. We're investigating the disappearance of Shelley Moore. She was reported missing by some friends 5 days ago. It looks like the last call on her log was to your number in the area of 4 a.m. that morning. Do you have some time? My eyes flew open fully now. I haven't seen her. 5 days? I'm sorry I haven't been feeling well. My pitch rose as my vocal cords stretched and seized. I have to go, but I'll call you. I'll call you. His voice had begun to leak out of the speaker, but I couldn't listen any more. I jammed my finger repeatedly on end call. I had been with Shelley last night, so how had she been missing for 5 days? None of this made sense. There was no way I'd been asleep on this couch for days. Blythe would have taken me to the hospital, right? I needed answers, and if the sharp stabbing behind my eyes was any indication, possibly an ambulance. The lining of my brain squeezed as I called for Blythe. The reverberation of my voice off the high ceilings, followed by the somber silence, lifted the hairs on the back of my neck. I tried to stand, but my legs buckled under my weight. My body sagged. On my second attempt, I managed to stumble down the hall to Blythe's room. I slid my hand against the wall to guide me as I walked, still not trusting my legs not to crumble under the weight of the raging fever. The patterns on the floor swirled under my feet with each step. I had to be hallucinating. My heart rate hiked, and I called for Blythe again. Still only silence. Near panicked, I pushed through Blythe's door. Shelley was sitting on the bed undressed and unmoving, as Blythe carved the last bit of a symbol on her chest. Candles on every surface illuminated the room. My dry, swollen throat wouldn't allow me to scream. A skull with grey chunks of meat still attached sat in the center of an altar on the dresser. The walls were covered in symbols. My breath hiked in my chest as I noted that a few matched those carved onto Shelley. Blythe brushed Shelley's hair back from her face and tucked it behind her ear, her smile slowly melting into a frown. This had to be a hallucination, a fever dream, something. My brain was cracking and aching, trying to comprehend the scene unfolding before me. My throat finally unlocked, and I whispered Blythe's name. She finally turned to me standing in the doorway, and her smile returned. She gently patted a spot on the bed twice beside Shelley, gesturing for me to sit. I didn't want to. I wanted nothing more than to run. But my legs operated, but my legs weren't my own. They marched themselves to the edge of the bed, and I sat. Blythe looked at me with the eyes of a mother regarding their toddler. They'd caught twirling their fingers in the toilet water for the 3rd time in a day. Disappointed, slightly disgusted, but still with love. Vomit inched from my stomach towards my throat. I was terrified. Let's start being honest with each other, okay, Brian? She tilted her head while her eyes bore into me. A small smirk quivered on her lips. I know about Shelley. I saw everything. I can't even begin to tell you how disappointed I am. She paused for a second as she sucked in a big breath. Her face relaxed and returned her familiar beauty. I sent a little friend home with you to see what you'd do. To see if things were worth salvaging. And boy was I sorely disappointed. She clicked her tongue and her eyes bulged. You slept well considering what was growing inside of you, and then texted her, right after you made plans to see me. Not cool, Brian. Not cool at all. Blythe was pacing back and forth in front of her bed, erratically throwing her hands around as she spoke. I kept my face as emotionless as possible and listened. I was terrified to say the wrong thing to her. The longer she spoke, the more her eyes began to bulge in and out like a fucked up cuckoo clock. Spit flew from her mouth with every accusation. The smell of burning hair wafted across the room. My eyes flicked to the altar where a small clump of hair singed from a nearby candle. Blythe's grin stretched, showing all her teeth. I imagined her biting into chunks of my skin and swallowing like a crazed cannibal, making sure I'd never be able to leave her. Fear was eating the small remnants of the rational part of my brain that was left. Her bulging eyes now glittered with interest, like she could see inside of me, like she knew. Right, that. I guess you're not the only one keeping secrets, Brian, but I told you I needed more time. But before we get into any of that, let me help you with your back. Blythe danced her way behind the bed, humming. The creaking of the springs in the mattress as she crawled towards me twisted my stomach. She slid her legs on either side of my body and twirled her finger gently in circles around the monstrosity on my back. She leaned in close, her hot breath against my back, and lips brushing me in a way that bordered erotic as she whispered. My legs still wouldn't work to run. When the whispering stopped, she ran her hot tongue across the lump. As the saliva cooled, something began to pulse under the surface of my skin, pushing and stretching its way out. "Yes, you're doing such a good job," Blythe squealed. "What a good girl. Come meet my friends." There was a flat pop as the pain in my back peaked and then subsided. My body crumbled forward as I wept from the pain. I felt flaps of skin flutter as the thing set two fuzzy feet onto either side of the wound and heaved itself out of my back. It scurried up to my shoulder and twitched as it hesitantly hovered its furry, bloody leg at the entrance to my ear. "You won't fit in there any more, silly. You've gotten too big," Blythe cooed. I shivered as it twitched once more before jumping onto Shelley. Blythe unwrapped her legs around me, clapping gleefully as she made her way back around the bed to watch. I knew what it was the second I felt its legs on me, but admitting it while it crawled out of my skin would have taken me past the point of insanity. Now that I could see it on Shelley, I couldn't deny myself the truth anymore. It was a spider. A huge goddamn spider. It clamped its legs around Shelley's head with its abdomen pressed hard against her face. I had no knowledge of nor experience with giant spiders, but my brain screamed that it was eating her. I couldn't help it. I puked and sobbed. The last bit of hope that clung to all of this being a fever dream died as a low, muffled moan leaked from Shelley's mouth underneath the spider's fat body. Blythe grabbed a jar off the altar and threw it at my head, narrowly missing. The jar shattered as it smashed behind me. A combination of ammonia and rot replaced the singed hair smell. The symbol behind me smeared as the foul liquid wept down the wall. "Don't you dare fucking cry for her, Brian." "She's a whore," Blythe sobbed as she screamed. As more of the symbols smeared behind us, I felt a pressure release from my legs. I could wiggle my toes. Blythe was wailing with her hands ripping at her hair. The spider didn't seem bothered by the noise, still pulsing and shivering against Shelley's moaning face. Blythe had completely lost it. If I thought I was terrified before, I lacked the words to describe what I felt at that moment. There was no doubt in my mind Blythe was going to kill me. My eyes darted, looking for a weapon. Finally, they landed on a snow globe I'd bought Blythe a month ago on our trip to New York. Sleeping with Blythe in the hotel was where the idea of living together was born. Where I had decided I didn't want to spend any more nights without her in my arms. Where this whole mess started. I snatched the globe from its place on the stand and slammed it against Blythe's head as hard as I could. Blythe dropped to the floor. The room fell silent except for Shelley's ever-softening moans. I couldn't be sure Blythe wasn't faking, but I couldn't bring myself to check. I needed to get out of there as fast as possible, for my sanity more than my safety. I slammed the door behind me to trap the spider inside and ran to the garage. I wanted nothing more than to run, but I had to be sure the spider was dead. I couldn't end up like Shelley. I grabbed the gas canister for the mower and with a fresh wave of nausea, headed back into the house. I threw gas on the curtains before splattering a trail to Blythe's bedroom door. Shelley didn't deserve to die here, but as far as I knew, she was gone the second the spider suctioned itself to her face. I grabbed the matches by the fireplace, lit one, and threw it onto the curtain before finally running out the door and tasting the night air. I tripped over my feet before landing on the lawn. Blood loss and shock were whispering to stay, to let this soft grass be home. I was so tired, but images of Shelley sitting naked, the life being sucked out of her, broke me of giving up, and adrenaline surged once more. I shakily pulled myself up and into my car. I drove for 2 hours straight before my gas light dinged. I booked the closest no-contact hotel room and arrived on fumes. I was covered in sweat, puke, and blood. The plan, however poor, was to clean up, rest only for an hour, refill my car, and keep driving, put as much distance as possible between everything that had happened and myself. I wanted so badly to believe I had made all of it up, that Shelley was fine and not texting me back because I had made an ass out of myself, that I had slept through the dinner with Blythe, that I was still asleep, dreaming the most fucked up fever dream I'd ever had in my life. But the pain from the gaping hole in my back wouldn't let me pretend. I'm not ashamed to admit I cried in the shower until the lines in my hands were peaks and valleys. I tore up the bed sheets to make a makeshift bandage for my back. It looks disgusting, but I can't get help. I can't even begin to think of a story I could tell the hospital that would explain my injuries. Or if the police were looking for me for Shelley, or the fire, or Blythe. Even exhaustion hasn't blessed me with sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I picture Shelley naked with symbols carved all over her body, covered in webs. The spider on her face, pulsing and shaking in ecstasy with hundreds of babies on its back. I should have stood on the lawn and watched the whole house burn, just to be sure. I went out to the car and got Merc laptop to search for news articles on the fire I started at Blythe's, but the information was limited. As of the last time I searched, they hadn't reported any bodies. It's being referred to as an accidental fire. My mind was still swimming, so I started to write. I need someone to know my story. I need them to know that I never meant for this to happen. Even after almost a year of seeing Blythe loving her, I had no idea she was into anything like this. She never once acted unstable in the entire relationship. I never meant to hurt Shelley. She didn't deserve to be caught up in this mess, and I shouldn't have left her. For the last 10 minutes, I've heard something softly tapping at my hotel door. Fear has a way of filling in the gaps. My brain tells me the feet are soft but strong. Furry and many. I won't get up and I won't look. I've seen enough. There's a storm coming. I can hear Blythe's tinkering laughter riding on the winds. The giggling of a child who knows they're about to pull a very naughty trick.